College Football Nation, we are back and we are pumped. This is a fun week for college football. We got some great games ahead of us. Heck, they even gave us a great Friday night.
Wow. Yeah.
Dave, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing awesome, and I can't wait. Like, we got a little UTSA on in the background, but Washington, UCLA coming up. You're right. Friday night's going to be fun. We got the Chipster and the new Penix looking like a Heisman Trophy candidate for Washington. So it's going to be fun tonight and roll right into tomorrow.
And I'm already juiced up watching this UTSA game. They're scoring every 30 seconds. It's been great. If you're playing tonight, I did. I've locked in Frank Harris in every lineup I played. I'm very exposed to this game. So is everyone else who's playing. So I'm not the only one, but it feels good anyway. Looking at ahead for this week, like I said, there's a lot of exciting games for fantasy. There's a few we're going to be able to know. We're going to go through it, but more so than normal weeks, I feel really locked in this week on who I'm targeting, where the value plays are. Before we get into all that, Dave, how did we do last week?
Really good again. I know we talked on the side, couple 200-point lineups, and it really, revolved around that Wake Clemson game. We had a couple pieces of it, maybe not as much as we wanted, but the other areas that we hit, really well, I thought. Hooker, we were all over. Jalen Daniels, once again, cashing us in. Corum was great. Top running back on the board. I know you had a lot of shares of Corum last week, and I know you did too. And then big, we said underpriced. Cam Camper at 5,600 cashes in a 25-plus point game, almost 5x value. That was huge. Estime from Notre Dame, another 6x value, over 25 points. It was a good week. It really was. And I think, like you said, Joel, this one looks almost like we're locked in. That's how good I'm feeling about this slate.
I'm with you. This is a week. I think this is a week where I'm feeling as confident as I felt this season heading into a week. So get our plays in. We're winning this week. Get comfortable with the tournaments you want to enter. That's big, right? Because listen for not just who we're playing, but which type of tournaments to play them in. Right? There's some guys that are going to be better for the big GPPs. There's some guys that are safer cash play. So listen out for that. Make sure you know the different types of plays as we get ready to dive into this slate. Now, it's a big slate. It's going to be a lot of games tomorrow. Another thing to keep in mind is there are still some weather concerns in some areas. So check your game. If your team is going to be playing in really poor weather, you might not want to be hammering the passing games as much in a flood storm or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna do like we normally do. We're gonna go through the depth charts back to our normal routine, except for instead of going through every depth chart for the games that don't deserve it, we're not gonna do it. Right? We're going to go through depth charts of those games of those teams that aren't going to score. So
I agree, and I think we should start Michigan, Iowa, like right there. Like I'm telling you, right, I can't touch it. There's just nothing that attracts me to that game. Iowa plays those kind of dirty games. Obviously, Petrus is terrible. And then after last week, McCarthy, I got no faith in. Corum, I think they just focus on him. So for me, I'm a no play across the board in Michigan, Iowa. How about you?
Nah, done. Out. Yeah. Not even considering anyone in the game. Iowa's got a good enough defense where I don't want to target them. And Michigan is just, they got a good defense too. I don't need to target Iowa. There's just no reason to play one in a low-paced game. And especially with these big, slates with 10, 14 games, you got to eliminate some games. You can't play players from everyone. So take these low-scoring, slow-paced games, get them out completely. And that's what we'll continue to do as we go through each game and the depth charts per you. So let's start right here in the first game on the wheel, which is the Kentucky Ole Miss game. Now, this is a great game to watch tomorrow. For fantasy purposes, I don't think it's a complete fade. There's some guys that you can look at, but it's not the most attractive. It's not going to be the highest paced. Both teams are okay defensively. Who are you looking at here in this game?
I guess my favorite is going to be Chris Rodriguez from Kentucky. He's back from suspension. Smoke has had some fumbling issues for Kentucky. I think he could jump right in and have a huge game right away, and he's being priced like he's only going to get a little bit of the carry, 6K. He could be a 7, 8K running back by the end of the season. So he's the first one I'm looking at, and I think he's going to get a decent amount of carries in that backfield based upon the uncertainty they've had behind him.
Yeah, I'm with you. There's a big question mark around it, which I think makes him even more interesting for big tournaments because
Yep.
he will be low owned. But if he's comes back and he's healthy and he's playing, well, he wasn't hurt; he was suspended. So if
Yep.
he's playing like he was last year, yeah, I think he's underpriced here. I think that's a really good call. The only other guy on Kentucky I'm interested maybe in is Tavion Robinson. He's the number one receiver. They do look at him a lot. So if he gets a lot of looks in this game and this ends up being, they score some points at 5,800, I think the price is fair. I don't think it's cheap. I don't think it's expensive. I think it's what he should be, but I think he could pay off that price tag.
Yeah, I agree. I think versus Ole Miss, they're going to they are going to give up some points. They're going to give up some offense. So 1 or 2 Kentucky shares is good. And I think he's your best other outside of Rodriguez.
Now, there's only one guy I'm looking at on the Ole Miss side, and it's a GPP play for sure. It's definitely a dart, but it's Kinshon Junkins. Junkins is the number 2 back technically, but he got the carries last week and he looked really good. He's looked really good all year. So, I'm kind of leaning on the notion that maybe he's the guy, right? Maybe he's just I think he's a freshman. He's looked like he's the better back, even though we know Zach Evans is good. But Junkins has just looked really good. If they feed him the ball, I still don't think it's a great matchup because Kentucky's got a good defense. But at 5K, if he's as good as he's looked, then that's a good value.
Yeah, I agree. I will also consider some Jonathan Mingo. I think at 5,800, it's a good price. He's scored double digits every single game. Again, this one's more of a GPP play because you're going to have to get a game script where it's more points than probably, the experts predict. You're looking at a 54.5 total. That's it, bottom half of what we're looking at. So, yeah, I like Judkins, and I might play a little Mingo at that price.
I love it. Let's keep this moving over to this Texas Tech Kansas State game. When the week started, this was a game I circled. I was kind of one of the first ones I was going to. As I continue to look at it and the week went on, I came off of it a bit. This Texas Tech team, while they play fast and they run a lot of plays, they got a little bit of a better defense than I think you would think. They can slow people down. These haven't been shootouts they've been in, really. So I'm still targeting some guys in this game, but maybe not as heavily as I originally anticipated. The first play for me, the obvious one of my favorite receivers on the board, it's going to be Miles Price. Miles Price is Texas Tech's best receiver. He had a slow start to the season. They weren't getting him involved as quickly. Last week, they turned to him. I think he had 13 or 14 targets, which is really aggressive. He doesn't even need to break the 150 yards. If he just gets 10 catches alone, with whatever it is, 80 yards, that's going to pretty much get his value there. So just based on his work and volume, I think Miles Price is in play here. I think 400.
Yeah, I like that call. Looking at the other side of the ball, I do like Deuce Vaughn. I think 7,200 is just crazy right now for a running back that can get that much. And we saw Bijan Robinson get a really good game against Texas Tech last week. Tech's kind of rushing numbers are a little skewed because they played Houston, who doesn't rush or run the ball very well. So I think Deuce Vaughn could be in play at 7,200. I wanted to get your opinion on that price tag.
Severely underpriced.
Yeah,
I think Deuce Vaughn is the number one, maybe my number one back of the week.
Yeah.
Because Deuce Vaughn could be, we wouldn't bat an eye if Deuce Vaughn was 8,800, right? And then I probably wouldn't play him as much because there's competing. But at 7,200, he's going to get the volume. He's one of the best backs in the country. I think they underpriced him here, and I'm going to be playing him heavily.
Yeah, agreed. And again, we go back to this Kansas State, and like we did a little bit with the Oklahoma game, you can pair Adrian Martinez with Deuce Vaughn. Just the way they kind of try and attack you in the running game. But I wouldn't pair Adrian Martinez, a wide receiver, and Deuce Vaughn. You got to find a little mix here, or Deuce Vaughn and a receiver. They're either going to run a lot or they're going to pass a lot. And in this game, I do think this is a running game. So I could even see myself maybe a little piece of Adrian Martinez as well. I think 7's a little high, but I could see, I don't know. That's a little high. I think we got better quarterback options now that I think of it.
I think you made a good point. The one thing I'll add about Adrian Martinez is you're playing Adrian Martinez as a running back. He just happens to also get some passing stats that makes him even a stronger running back than the other ones. But do not feel obligated to play a receiver with Adrian Martinez because more than likely that's going to ruin your lineup. The guy who ends up having 3 catches for 40 yards and doesn't get your value because you wanted to play him with Martinez. You're playing a running back in Martinez that's also going to get some passing stats to boost his numbers. Think of it that way.
Right. And Vaughn checking in. Vaughn, yes, he hasn't scored in the last 2 games. Yes, that's a little surprising against, Oklahoma. Thought we'd see a little more, but Adrian Martinez took it over. So I think this is the week that we do see a little bit more Deuce Vaughn. And this is the lowest. This is the floor that we'll see of him this year.
One of my thought process with fantasy stuff like that is also Deuce Vaughn is way too good to not score for 5 weeks in a row. That's just not going to happen.
No.
So it's coming. Can I guarantee it's this week? No, but it's going to be one of the next couple of games. He's going to have a couple of touchdowns because he's just not going to get shut out. He's one of the best backs in the country. So now's the time to target him while the price is dropping, while people might be low on him, because he's going to be good and it's going to be a big day coming in the next couple of weeks for sure.
Agreed.
All right, let's keep this train moving. Let's look at this Oklahoma TCU game, which another interesting game here. Oklahoma is going to score points. They got a pretty explosive offense. And TCU is a mixed bag. Max Duggan has started to look pretty good. I mean, he's playing decent. I'm not a Duggan fan. It's hard for me to get around to him. I think he's burned me too much in the past, but he's looked okay recently. So in a game where I think points you're going to need them, I'll tell you guys, one of my favorite plays in this game and on the whole week is going to be Kendre Miller, I just seems another guy who seems very underpriced at 5,200. This is one of the minimum level running backs, and they got him really involved last week. He really broke off for a huge day. Super cheap here in a game that I think could have a lot of points.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm looking at the point total. This is the highest on the board at 69.5. So I think you got to get a lot of shares in this game. If you start in the TCU side, I love that play. 5,200 is just, you're going to be able to build nicely around that. For me, Duggan, I'm not as scorched as you, but I still don't like his game. But at 6,700, my biggest concern in this one is he needs to do it on the ground. And if they fall behind even a little bit, we lose that value, I think, with his legs. So I'm not sure how much I can play him. But on the other side, I think there's a lot we can play. I like Mims, but I like Farouk a lot too. He seemed to get a decent amount last week. He had 5, catches, 69 yards, had a nice week. He's had 2 nice weeks actually in a row. So I'm trying to think if I'm going to go Mims heavy and then, not pair him with Farouk and use Farouk on some other lineups. I'm probably going to mix them in, but not pair them.
I like that. I think that makes sense. I think, I love this Oklahoma offense. Like you said, this is one of the highest totals of the game. The struggle with Oklahoma for me is that they're priced up pretty high, and it's hard to get a lot of them in your lineup. Mims is the most expensive receiver on the board by a pretty wide margin. I like Mims. I don't think he's the best receiver, so it's kind of hard to get to him because of that. I like Eric Gray. I think my favorite play on Oklahoma will be Gray. He's just been super consistent and good, and I think positive touchdown regression is on the way. It's hard for someone to be that good and not score touchdowns, right? It's just doesn't make sense. So I think those touchdowns are going to come. So I think at 7,600, he makes sense here as well.
I agree. And, I'll talk Gabriel real fast. I'm not in love with that price tag. That's just too much for me. I know he put up some points at the end of the Kansas State game, but still, we haven't seen a 40-point game out of him yet this year. We're on the contrast, and we'll talk about that game soon. You got Jalen Daniels putting up 45 in the past 2 games at a much lower salary. I mean, I remember last week we both got DJ and Hartman upwards of 40. For this salary to pay off, you have to get 40. And I'm just not sure we can get there. He hasn't been there yet.
I agree with you. I'm not really heavily on him. The one caveat I was like, if you really love this game, there is a lot of value to be found. So if there is a week where you can spend up, it's this one because I know we can find value elsewhere.
Yeah.
I think there's other areas to spend up though, so I'm probably going to be doing that somewhere else. But I think that's the only sentiment. If you really believe in this Oklahoma team and that's the direction you want to go, maybe this week because of the value out there.
Yep. Agreed.
All right, let's look at. Well, no, we're not even going to look at Michigan Iowa. We already said we're skipping that. There's just no reason to play it. But we will take a look at this Purdue game. I think the big question mark here is what is going to happen with Aiden O'Connell. His price tag. I mean, listen, is he officially out? Let's take a look. Game time decision.
Yeah.
The price tag is really good, but he's playing a Minnesota team that looks like one of the better teams, one of the better defenses. They're going to run the ball a lot. They're going to slow the pace down. I'm probably less interested in O'Connell as I would be interested in Charlie Jones, but my Charlie Jones interest is based on O'Connell playing. I don't want to get too exposed to Charlie Jones with a backup quarterback, but if O'Connell plays, Charlie Jones, I think, is underpriced.
I agree. Charlie Jones is just a fantastic option every week O'Connell plays. O'Connell, I think the story is they went to high school together, and O'Connell, Charlie Jones was wasting away somewhere. I want to say KState, something out there. Yeah. And O'Connell's like, hey, man, why don't we bring him in? And all of a sudden he's become number one by a mile on that team. He relies on him so much. So Charlie's in play, absolutely 100%, only if O'Connell plays.
Right, exactly. Now, if O'Connell doesn't play, I'm completely off of Purdue because this Minnesota defense is very good, and I don't think they're going to score that many points. If O'Connell plays, I think that offense runs because O'Connell's a very good player, and he'll make it churn even against a good defense. So we got to wait and see news there. On the other side, on the Minnesota side, I think the only guy to consider is Ibrahim. It's not a great matchup. Purdue's not bad up front, and at 9,500, it's just a lot of money for someone to just be like. I still think he can get there. I would prefer Ibrahim in small tournaments in cash because he has a really high floor. He's 100 yards and a touchdown is pretty safe, but 100 yards and a touchdown at 9,500 isn't value. So you need him for him to get in a tournament. You need him to get probably 2 touchdowns or 3 for this to really work. So that's why I say it's small tournaments. Cash is more my preference for Ibrahim.
I agree. I mean, what's burned in my head with Purdue is the Syracuse game. Watch that pretty heavily. They did shut down Sean Tucker, who is a very good running back. I don't want to give him all the way the similar to Ibrahim, but he's good. He's probably just a step below. 18 for 42, only 2 catches out of the backfield. They even shut down Schrader in that game. So they tend to have a decent defensive front. For me, 9,500, I gotta have an absolute cakewalk. That's why I'm with you. Maybe 10% of my GPPs are Ibrahim, but it's not much.
I agree. All right, so we'll keep this moving over to this Illinois-Wisconsin game. I don't think we even need to go into the depth chart. I'm not touching Illinois against a really solid Wisconsin defense. The only player in this entire game I'll consider is Braylon Allen, who's one of the better backs in the country. But again, it's a slow-paced game. I think a similar sentiment with Braylon Allen as I said Ibrahim. I think small tournaments cash, he makes sense because I think he does have a very high floor. But I just don't think there's going to be a high enough scoring game for someone at that price to pay off a GPP price tag.
Yeah, I agree. I do like to play him, but even last week when he gets Ohio State for 165, he busted it for 75 on one run. So there's just, with Braylon Allen in this game, I do think there's more value. I do think he can – I actually like him better than Ibrahim, but we're probably going to need a long run to pay off for the 8,700. So I don't like him heavily, but I will play shares of him for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you, Joe. I'm going to have a small percentage of him as well. I think we can just completely skip this Navy Air Force game again.
I'll say maybe Brad Roberts, but and Roberts is getting that 20-plus touch that we like, and he's going to get that in an Air Force. I mean, in a military game, but 7K is a lot, so be careful. He's attractive, but he could be almost a little bit too overpriced. I like him on most weeks, but it's a little iffy this week for me.
I totally agree with you. I think he's the best player on the field, which is a reason why you might want to play him. But both teams are going to play a very slow pace. There's going to be a very few possessions. It's just not a game script that's friendly for fantasy. No. So maybe you want to play the best player in the field, but I really couldn't consider anyone else here.
Agreed.
All right, now things get interesting. Let's take a look at this Bama-Arkansas game. There's some question marks here, right? I think from the Alabama defensive side, Alabama still has a pretty elite defense. If you really like this game and you want to run back one of these Arkansas guys with a Bama stack, I'm okay with that because I can see Arkansas keeping this competitive. But you don't want to super attack Arkansas here against one of the best defenses in the country. That doesn't seem like a good idea. However, on the other side of the ball, Arkansas has given up major passing days to a few average quarterbacks this year. So what is the potential Heisman winner, maybe best quarterback in the country, going to do against a team that has proven that they're not great against the pass? I think there's a lot of potential here. Listen, there's not going to be many times I'm ever going to recommend someone at almost 10K. I just think it's really hard to build lineups that way. But on a week that I've mentioned multiple times, there's a lot of value out there, and a team that really has struggled to stop the pass, with the best passer in the country. I think you're going to want to get some Bryce Young shares this week.
I agree 100%. First off, on the Arkansas side, don't get sucked into the KJ Jefferson price. He looks almost too easy at 6,700. And with a script that you could see them playing, a high-scoring game, I'm concerned he's very valuable running the ball. That's where I think Alabama really has a good defense. It's going to be tough for him. Only 12 completions last game against A&M. I just think that could be a sucker price. That's just my opinion, and maybe he goes off. I don't know. But on the other side, I think it's Bryce Young, and I think you would do very well picking any of those receivers. They're actually well-priced, all of them.
One thing I'm doing for GPPs to be a little bit different is I'm playing Jahmyr Gibbs basically as a receiver. So he can play with Young. They throw to him a lot. He gets a lot of looks out of the backfield. So he's going to be in my rotation basically as a pass catcher for Bryce Young. And I'm thinking those lineups that play Young and Gibbs, both expensive, are going to be different because I don't think many people are going to do that. So that's a GPP play I'm doing, just thinking he might get a bunch of looks out of there. When I am targeting the receivers, the one I'm looking at most actually is Ja'Cory Brooks.
He was great last week.
He was great last week. He looked great to end the year last year. I don't know why they're putting him so far down the depth chart. I mean, that he is the fourth option, but he's getting the balls. He looks like he's better than that. So it's a risk because, there's just a lot of guys that all play for Alabama. But to me, I think Ja'Cory Brooks seems like the favorite, and he's the cheapest. So he's the number one play for me.
Yeah, he is. And then Holden's my second favorite in that group. I just think he's been the most consistent so far, averaging 3.5, 4 catches a game. If we can just get one TD in there and break out that price tag, I think you could go right and pairing those two and look at that 10-9 between the two and throw in Bryce Young. And you're actually hitting your average where you should be, about 6.5, 7K. So it's not bad.
Well, the one other play I'll mention that could be considered is Cameron Letou. So the reason I like him is because they are getting him the ball.
Yeah.
And he's only 3,700. So if you want to find more ways to save salary pairing somebody with Bryce Young, I'm okay with him. I think he could get in the end zone. That's all he needs to do. 30 yards and a touchdown pays off that price tag.
Yeah, I'd like it. Yeah, you're right. It feels like, a situation where you need about 12, 15 points, and you're in a great situation.
Yeah, no. All right, so let's move over to this Oklahoma State Baylor game, which has me all sorts of jazzed up. So I love this game. I think I'm betting the over on this game. I'm hoping this is going to be a game that comes a shootout because I'm going to be. I think the most owned player I'm going to have this week is Braden Johnson.
I was going to say 4,300. Oh man,
for 4,300. Someone made a mistake. First of all, Brendan Presley being 6,900. Who's making these prices? Because Braden Johnson's the number one receiver. So I don't get that. Now, I want to see Jaden Bray if he's going to play because Bray could cut into a little bit. He's expected to be active. I don't know if week one he's going to be their go-to guy. Bray could be involved here. Maybe he cuts in a little bit. But at the end of the day, from what we've seen so far, Johnson's the number one receiver. And Baylor is two things. One, they're better defense than Michigan State was last week, but they're similar as they're a funnel defense. They can stop the run that you have to throw on them. And they've given up a big day to multiple receivers this year. So if you've been watching, receivers can beat them. So if you want to target a pass catcher, a cheap, underpriced Braden Johnson, number one guy, I think all things point to that play making sense to me.
I love it. Baylor's 7th in the nation in rushing yards allowed, 77 per game. So throw out the running game, air it out with Spencer Sanders. And I think you got a great, we've nailed the underpriced situation for 5 straight weeks. I'm already calling this one a nail. This is it. To me, this is the most underpriced player on the board.
Yeah, I'm with you. He's going to be probably my highest. Oh, and I'm playing him with Spencer Sanders a lot because he also is underpriced. Because Spencer Sanders, let's not forget, he's getting 10 to 15 carries a game to go along with the fact that he's a regular quarterback that can throw. He's not just a runner. So to get a dual threat quarterback under 7K is a misprice. Now, this Baylor defense is good, but I don't think they're so good. They're going to they don't shut teams out, right? They're going to score points. Spencer Sanders is like 25 years old. He's experienced. They can let him kind of run this offense at 6,500. I think they underpriced him here.
Yeah, and the beauty of him in DFS, not his overall game, is he's a gunslinger. So he will create some turnovers here and there. He'll take some risks. Turnovers aren't the worst thing in the world because it just creates a chaotic game. So I think this is one of those games where I think we're going to see. I'm with you. It's one where I think it's going over the total at 55.5. And I think he's going to they're playing a different game this year, right? They've realized that their front four is a lot weaker than it was in years past. And they're trying to play foot on the gas pedal. And I like it.
And if we're going to get that style, then we might as well target the game. I'll go against that. They'll run it back. I'll play Richard Reese at 4,900 at under 5K in a game that we think is going over. They're going to get him. He's going to get 20 plus carries. Puts one in. I think the price tag is too good here. So that stack of Sanders, Reese, and Johnson, I'm going to have a lot of shares of.
Yeah, and Oklahoma State's down in the 50th in the nation, allowing about 130 yards a game on the ground. Reese, they've shown now he's the guy. 40 carries the past 2 games. Before that, only 16 total in 2 games. So they've committed to him. 4,900 is a beautiful price here. I really like him. I think he busts out for 20 easily.
For sure. Anyone else on the Baylor side you're looking at?
Not necessarily. I just don't have enough faith in their passing game. I don't know where Baldwin's at. Like, there's some question marks around him if he's really healthy or not. He only had 1 catch last week. So, I think it's Reese, and I'll just watch the others. If I get burned, I get burned.
I think I'm with you on that as well. All right, so now let's keep this fun train moving. Iowa State and Kansas, we have to give Jalen Daniels his due. He's been unbelievable this year. And Jalen Daniels is exhibit A of why you want a dual threat quarterback, because he's not a great thrower, but they get down to the red zone and he ends up tossing a couple touchdowns every week. And then he runs for another almost 100 yards in a touchdown every week. He's like 2 players, and they still refuse to put him above 7K. That's baffling to me. Even though this Iowa State defense has been okay, they haven't played anyone. So I think the numbers of Iowa State's defense look better than the reality is. They haven't played a good team, and this is going to be a real test for them. And I think this game also has some scoring potential as well.
I do, and it's all Jalen Daniels all day. The way they want to play, and I still go back to last year, is they want to play a game. They know they can't beat you pretty much with size or athletically from a, upfront standpoint. They do want to space you out and skill you out wide. And that starts with Jalen Daniels. That's why they brought him in. And once they space him out and give him room to operate, he's been great. And I do think they're going to want to play no matter who they play. I mean, go back to West Virginia earlier this year. That's a big boy team. They wanted to space him out. And I think they're going to do the same against Iowa State. I still don't be scared. I think 7K, there's still value with them. I
agree. And I also maybe one lineup I'll pair him with a receiver, but for the most part, I'll play him alone. I don't need to put him with any of the receivers. I think he's fine to just play solo. Now, on the other side of the ball, because of Jalen Daniels and because I think Kansas offense is legit and they're going to score and they're going to play fast, I think this ends up being a higher scoring game. I think Iowa State gets opportunities. And there's a lot of guys I like on the Iowa State team. I just like this game environment, right? I like, because I think Kansas will score, I think they're going to come back. So I'm okay with Hunter Deckers. I think Jarrell Brock is underpriced at 5,400 against this pretty soft Kansas defense. I'm playing a lot of Brock, but I love Xavier Hutchinson. Oh, man, do I love Xavier Hutchinson. He's been getting double-digit targets per week. He's their best player. He's one of the best receivers in the country. In a game that's going to need points, they're going to throw to him a ton. He's going to – after Johnson, he might be my next highest-owned receiver.
I totally agree. I mean, he's 36 catches on the season in 4 games, so 9 catches alone per game. So it's double-digit targets, and that's not going to stop this week against a Kansas team. 5 touchdowns, so we're getting the targets that we need in the red zone as well. So Hutchinson's a smash play for me for sure. I do like pairing him up with Deckers. I think Deckers can get you there 20, 25, and that's kind of what you need at his salary. So I'll play him in a little super flex spot here and there, but it's Hutchinson. if I do play Hutchinson, I don't mind playing Brock with him because I just think the pace of this game, like you said, I think you can get value in both here. So I think it's safe to play kind of a mix of all 3, 4. You could even get Noel in there a little bit, but I wouldn't be scared mixing in 3, 4 players from one side in this game.
I have to laugh. I may have mentioned this last week, but I every time I say this, I laugh. People for so long were all talking about Purdy being the savior for Iowa State and how Purdy was going to get them.
I hated him.
And I think Deckers I think he's better. Deckers, I think, is legit. I think people are almost not believing in Deckers because they feel burned by Purdy. I think you just got to realize it's a new regime. I think Deckers is better than people are giving him credit for. I think he's a good quarterback.
I love that point. Purdy, like, he had that year when he came up as a freshman that, opened people's eyes, but he was their detriment last year. Yeah. And he kind of reminds me of Graham Mertz out of Wisconsin. Like, they won't go away from him, and they didn't go away from him, and it killed them. It really killed them. In the year that they were ranked in the top 10, he kind of submarined them pretty bad. And I think Deckers is feeling that kind of heat from a DFS standard. So I agree.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, that's why 5,800 is really cheap for a quarterback. So
versus Kansas. Like, I used the Duke. I forget the Duke quarterback's name, but I used him last week. And he put up about 28, 29 points. Really nice, end of the game. He didn't run for much, but he still was able to put value against this bad Kansas defense.
Totally agree. So get some shares, get some exposure to this game. It's going to be really fast-paced, fun environment. All right. Wake Forest, Florida State. Dave, I know you're a Florida State fan. Who are you looking at here?
I am, and I will absolutely – like, if DJ Uiagalelei can put up that kind of week against that Wake Forest defense, Jordan Travis has to be in play here. I know 8,800 is a lot. I get it. But it's the dual threat that we talked about earlier. And in a game that's the second highest projected point total on the board at 66 points, I think you got to get some Jordan Travis in there. From a Florida State perspective, I think there are a couple other guys that I would target as well. I do like the running game. Ward's been fantastic, but Wilson is he's a huge target. I think he's like 6'7", 6'8". He had his breakout game against Louisville. Oh, Jay Wilson. Sorry.
Johnny.
Yeah. Yep. He just had that huge game against Louisville on Friday night. I think his value is better. And I think he's someone special that is probably going to end up in the NFL one day. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm like Ward, Wilson, Travis on that side. I'll give you the Wake side.
Well, let me ask you a quick question before we go over to Wake. Do you have any shares of Trey Benson at the stone minimum?
That's not a bad call. Like, he's going to get 8 to 10 touches. And if he's hot, maybe more. So it's not a bad call.
And if this becomes one of those 42, 38 games, he can easily get you, 60 yards and a touchdown at the sub minimum. That's more than enough.
Yeah, he's been averaging 14 a game at the sub minimum. So Florida State likes to not give you a bell cow, right? They like to mix in different guys. Mike Norvell is – so I could see Benson. That's a good call. 3K, great call.
I'm going to play some Benson. I just think I like this game environment and the minimum price. It could be someone to throw a dart on. On the Wake Forest side, Sam Hartman, I'm going to go as far as to say, to me, is the best player in the country. He doesn't disappoint any week. You put him against one of the best defenses in the country in Clemson, he tears him apart. Now, the result was the result, but it wasn't Hartman's fault. He dropped him up and down the field all day. He's got them running like a well-oiled machine. Yes, the strength of this Florida State team is their pass defense, and that's a concern. But I'm on the belief that there is no stopping Sam Hartman. Right? I think Sam Hartman's going to get his no matter who he plays, and it's just a matter of you're playing one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and that's how it's going to go. So I'm going to be playing Sam Hartman at 8,400. I would have him in the 9K range every week. So the fact that he's still in the 8Ks to me is a discount. And you compare him with A.T. Perry. A.T. Perry is the best receiver on the team. He maybe has been slowed down a little bit. I don't think A.T. Perry is lost. He's going to recover. He's going to have some monster games this year. Could it be this week? Maybe. But to me, the criminal pricing is Jamal Banks. Jamal Banks looks to be 1B, right? It's not just one fluke week. 2 weeks in a row, he's been involved with Hartman. He's scored multiple touchdowns. why he's the minimum price is a severe mistake on DraftKings' part. It doesn't make sense. And I don't know why he's so far down the depth chart. He's clearly the number 2, if not maybe number 1 guy on this team. So at 3K, listen, there is the possibility he strikes out. So I'm not saying don't create a lineup without him. I can't play him everywhere, but I'm going to be overweight on him for sure.
Yeah, I like that call. I mean, it's just crazy to think that DraftKings hasn't adjusted to a guy that's put up an average of 27, 28 points a game. No, actually 30 in the past 2 games. It looks like Hartman, in a way, if he wants to throw a jump ball, a fade, I think it's going Banks' way. It's more that than A.T. Perry's his kind of safety blanket with, the short throws. But if he's got to throw one up, it's Banks. And I think he's going to have to throw some up this week to keep pace on Florida State.
Yeah. So Banks for sure. I'm going to be heavily invested there. And then, it looks like I don't trust this running game at all.
No.
Justice Ellison seemed to have taken the reins last week. They're just not good at running the ball, and they're not going to
It's for show. They run for show. That's it. Yeah, I agree.
I don't want to make this accusation, but there is, I think, something to it. When you have a guy who's in the Heisman running, you want him to win Heisman, you want him to get touchdowns.
Yeah.
And so you're not, when you get close, you don't want to run the ball. You want the guy to boost his stats and have a chance at winning a Heisman, which doesn't happen a lot of Wake Forest. So I also think that he's handicapped for that reason.
Yep. Agreed.
All right. Let's keep this moving. What are we doing with this Michigan State and Maryland game?
Well, I mean, last year the biggest non-secret was take any quarterback against Michigan State, right? It's changed not much. Like, as much as you thought they would have fixed that problem, not much. Washington thrown all over them. Last week, Minnesota, even Tanner Morgan had a decent game. I just don't know if I'm ready. I think the Tua price is great, 2-2. I think he's fantastic here. I just don't know. Does he have some injury designation? Yeah, it looks game time decision. So
I hope he's not concussed, because that would not look good.
That was not a good look last night. But I'll still say to this day, one concussion doesn't make another, but it sure doesn't help to have the 2 on top of each other.
That's not good.
And yeah, but I think as long as Talia plays, I think we have a really good spot, 6,800.
I know this isn't a good strategy, but listen, at the end of the day, there's a different way to look at the odds. The way I look at it is he came into the year as one of the guys we thought was going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country.
Yeah.
He hasn't looked great. I don't think he's going to not have a good game all year. This is a spot where it says this is the time for him to show up. I think that game's coming, and why not it be this week? So I think it's time to go back to, maybe people are finally getting too disappointed in him that moved off. Now's the time that we go in and we reap the benefits. Maybe he gets a little bit lower owned because, like you said, this is a matchup to exploit. You can't really run the ball that well in Michigan State, but you sure can pass, and he's going to have to do so, I think, this week. The other thing to keep an eye on is it Jarrett that might not play?
Yep.
So Jarrett's hurt, which then makes all this receiving core. There's 4 guys in play here.
They are.
So who you pick, it's hard. Jarrett is out. We make it a little easier. I'll probably look at Demas because he hasn't done anything this year, but he was their best player last year.
Yeah.
And then he got hurt. So if he's healthy, I think Demas is going to be due for a pop. I tend to think Jayshon Jones is more of a secondary type guy. I don't love him to play as much as some of the others. I do know Copeland can break out for a big game. So if you want some shares of him, I'll be fine with it. But one of the sneakier plays I like the most is actually a tight end. 2-2 likes to target the tight end. He did last year a lot. And this is a different tight end, but he's already gotten a lot of targets at 3,500. He's really cheap. And I think it's easier to pay off his price tag because he's so cheap. So I feel safer rolling in that direction.
Yeah, I agree. And one thing I will say is definitely keep an eye on the weather in this game. I know, there's some Hurricane Ian remnants coming up. It could put us towards Hembry. Hembry's a really tough runner. Michigan State's allowed about 130 yards a game on the ground. So, as we get closer to game time, I like the passing game. But if we're seeing some wins or anything from the tail side of that, I would load up on Hembry. I'm laying off him until I see what the weather is. And then I'm looking at receivers. I like where you're at with the receiving game, though.
I think it's a really good call because if we get shitty weather, I'm going to come off that, right? I don't want
Yeah.
to. We don't need to be too exposed. There's plenty of better weather games to target. So
Yeah, and Henry,
on that.
35 against SMU. Like, if you get a ground game script, he's like that tank. He runs hard.
Yeah.
So he could really he could be in play in a muddy game.
Yeah. The other person I want to bring some attention to is the Michigan State passing game. So again, this is contingent on weather. Let's just be confident going into this game and what that weather looks like. If it does look okay, and we think this could turn into a clear weather game and the ball can be aired out, I like both Jaden Reed and Keon Coleman a lot on this Michigan State side, right? We know Maryland is susceptible on defense to giving up points. Jaden Reed was going to the year as their best player. Everyone thought he was going to be one of the best players in the country. He hasn't done much yet. It's coming. Jaden Reed's a very good football player. He's explosive. This seems like a good spot for him to have a big day and for them to find him. So I want to play some Reed. I also like what I saw from Keon Coleman, who is a young up-and-coming guy who's only 4,200, who's been very involved in this offense. If this turns into a shootout, those are a couple guys I definitely want to target.
Yeah, and I'll even go a step further. I think Reed is like a really good play this week. For a guy averaging only 8.3, he was in the running for Biletnikoff before the year started. So, like you said, the talent is there. The options haven't been yet. And a lot of that's on Peyton Thorne. A lot of that's on their passing game in a week where, Maryland played Michigan pretty tight. I think we could see some, but it was still a high-scoring game. I think we could see some points in this game as well. So I like Jaden Reed. I do, and I think 6,000 is fair. I won't say it's underpriced, but it's fair.
Jaden Reed this week is giving me similar vibes of Brockers from Georgia.
Yeah.
What was it, 2 weeks ago?
Brock.
When he went off 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
Bowers, that's what it was.
Yep.
It's similar. It was like he hadn't done anything all year. People were kind of really play him, and then all of a sudden he had a huge day.
And he had 30-plus points because they focused on getting him the ball. That's how I see Reed could be this week. I agree 100%. They're going to try to get him the ball.
For sure. All right. Texas A&M and Mississippi State. Who are you looking at here?
Yeah, just I Will Rogers, I am interested in a little bit. Like I said last week, you got to see Arkansas move the ball primarily with the quarterback on the ground. Jefferson had a decent game, over 30 points. I think Will Rogers could put up a similar. I think A&M's defense is solid. We all know that, but I think you could get exposed a little bit here. I'm not in love with much else. A Shane maybe on the Texas A&M side, but I'm probably not hitting this game hard. 46.5 is the total, third lowest on the board. So probably those two. I don't know if I can get anywhere else.
Well, I was actually for early in the week, I was high on Dylan Johnson. But when I found out that Marks was going to be healthy and play, they kind of split, and there's not enough workload to be worth it. I do think you can run on them, but you need to get some volume. And between the two of them splitting the backfield up, it just seems like it's too diluted. So I came off of him. If Marks were to some reason be able to look, they've said he's looked good in practice. I think he's going to play.
Yep.
If he were to be out, would play Johnson. I liked him a lot if he gets all the carries. But in a timeshare, it's hard to go there.
Yeah. Can you say Marks' first name for me?
Joe Quavius.
Yeah, I love him too, though. I mean, Texas A&M, you make a good point, has allowed 200 yards per game on the ground. So it's there, like you said, the uncertainty is really what our concern is.
Exactly. Now, I do like, this A&M offense has looked poor. I don't want too many shares, but because they don't really have Smith, I think Ashane could get a ton of looks.
Yeah.
So if they're going to feed him the ball, I might play some Ashane just thinking he might just get fed the rock and, he can have a lot of – and a game that Mississippi State's going to play at fast pace. There might be extra possession. So I'm okay with Ashane, but that's probably the only guy that I'll be looking at.
Yeah, and it's a shame because, and I say a shame and a shame at the same time, but really, it is a shame because I thought Max Johnson would give a different look to that offense when they switched to him. I thought we were going to see just a little bit more open style. What I've seen is probably a worse. I don't want to say it's worse than King, but it's so diluted that I think they do have to win this game ugly from their standpoint. and pound the ball with the Shane. So I do like him this week.
Yeah. That's a wrap for the depth charts this week. Any bets you're looking at that you want to hammer in before we wrap this show up?
One of my favorites early on, and I've been big on them all year, but I'm going against them. The Oregon State Beavers have really paid off well for me. I think they're taking a trip out to Utah this week that makes it really tough for them. Coming off a USC game that they played, good enough to win, but found a way to lose in the end. Through 3 interceptions, killers. You go out to that Utah and you're playing a 2:00 game, which is really like 11 o'clock Oregon time, maybe 12. But I like Utah. I think they're going to pound them tomorrow. So that's one game I'm looking at early.
I like it. I'm going to give everyone some entertainment for tonight before you go to bed. Take UCLA. They're going to win this game. I think this Washington team, while they look good, a little overrated. I think people are overlooking how good UCLA is at home. I'm going to be on UCLA in the points.
Yeah, Washington is it's crazy anymore. And I like the call. They've turned from this really dull, dry team and got Penix in there, and now all of a sudden they're shooting out. And that's kind of what Chip Kelly wants, right? In UCLA. So Robinson, you talk about 25-year-old quarterbacks. UCLA's got one too. So, the key will be obviously in this game, the running game. And if UCLA is able to move the ball on the ground, they will win this game with margin. I agree.
I love it. I love it. Well, that's a wrap for this week. I'll leave you guys with this. We said at the beginning of the show, I stand by it. I feel good about this week. I love it. I'm going to be attacking this week because I think the plays feel good. They feel like there's a funnel of who to target. So the only thing you want to look at is weather and ownership. Take a look at that before I put your lineups in. Good luck. Don't forget to hit the like button. Give us a follow. Let us know how you did. Come back next week. We'd love to follow you guys and your winnings. And we'll see you next week.